doing anyway. We just vote on those minutes for August 4th.
All right, folks, it's 7 o'clock. It's time to get the Bridgeton City Council meeting to order. If you would all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Appreciate everybody coming out to storm. The clerk will now call the roll.
Mrs. Abram? Here. Mr. Fletch?
Here.
Mr. Grimmer?
Here.
Mr. Hine?
Here.
Mrs. Norris? Here. Mr. Purcell?
Here.
Mr. Sotell?
Here.
Mr. Zimmer?
We have all 8 council members present tonight. We're glad to see everybody. Go down to item D, which is the agenda approval.
Move approval. Second.
Motion's made and seconded for approval of tonight's agenda. Further comments, questions, additions, subtractions? Seeing none, those in favor of tonight's agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. We are not to the public portion of tonight's, but let me advise everybody, this is not the public hearing. So we have 2 public hearings tonight. If you wish to speak at the public hearings, I will call you up then. This is for any other business that anyone has outside of the public hearings. So I think you have one. Just give us your name, please,
My name is Tamaka Floyd.
and your address.
My address is 7 Kimberly Drive, St. Louis, Missouri, 6132.
Very good.
And I'm here on behalf of the special use permit today for the Bottom Fields location for the little daycare.
Very good. Yeah, I remember you came last meeting.
Yes.
Do you have anything further to?
No, basically, we're not on one grade, and we're just hopeful and glad at the process that is happening, and we're just a partner with VA now, and just everyone is coming aboard and very supportive of what we're trying to do for the residents and for the elderly and disabled. So it's hard work, but it's going, and we're waiting for the finished product so we can begin with our clients and our consumers.
Very good. That item will be up on tonight's agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else outside of the public hearings? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion and go down to item F tonight, which is approval of the minutes of the July 3rd, 2019 council meeting. Second. Motion's made and seconded to approve the regular council meeting minutes of July 3rd, 2019. Comments, suggested changes, additions, subtractions? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Couple of announcements. I'm very pleased to have the chief. If he will announce, we have 2 new officers with us tonight. Going to do it from there, or do up here where you will feel comfortable.
Tonight we have 2 of our 4 new officers. We have Kyle Brown and Scott Hodges. I just want to introduce for everybody to see this evening. You'll notice that they're considerably taller than I am, which is a good thing. But they're going to make a fine addition to the department. So welcome.
Kyle and Scott, we're glad to have you on the force. We hope you enjoy your work here and have a long career with the city of Bridgeton. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I also have 2 appointments to make tonight. So for your favorable consideration on the Historical Commission, Nancy Mishley from Ward 4. She is a new appointee. And then on Planning and Zoning, T. Christopher Peoples, also a new appointee, also from Ward 4.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for approval of the 2 appointees. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We will now recess to go in. A couple rules that we're going to follow tonight for the public hearing. So the first one will be on a proposed rezoning of a parcel of land at 3710 Harmony from R3 to B5 planned commercial. Because we have a number of people and a number of cards, we limit comments to 3 minutes. So each individual gets 3 minutes to come in and comment. We'll take up and we'll alternate, in favor, opposition, in favor, opposition. That's the way we work it. The staff will present first, then we'll start calling up everybody that wishes to comment on it. Fair enough for everybody? Also, because I know Ms. Fisher would ask, she thought more people maybe couldn't make it tonight, let me explain a little bit about the process on this. The ordinance will only be introduced and then tabled tonight. There will not be a final vote. So, because she had mentioned that a lot of people may not have made it tonight because of the storm, there's another opportunity for the public to come in and comment on this project. That will be at our first meeting in August. So you may want to mention it to your individual neighbors or friends, whatever, along the area there, that there's a second opportunity. It won't be a public hearing, but just as we had tonight, at every council meeting, there is a public comment period in which the public can express their viewpoints on issues back to council. So if we follow those rules and everything, we will have a very productive public hearing. All right. So the first, as I mentioned, is the petition for rezoning of the parcel of land located at 3710 Harmony Lane from R3 Single Family Dwelling, to B5 Planned Commercial District. We will have Mr. Greitens come up and present it for the city. Zach? Give us your name and address, please.
Zach Riggins, Planning and Zoning Officer of the City of Bridgeton, 12355 Natural Bridge Road, Bridgeton, Missouri, 63044.
Very good. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is application 19-PZ-06, a request to rezone the property at 3710 Harmony Lane from R3 Single Family Dwelling District to B5 Planned Commercial District. Just a little background, the B5 Planned Commercial District, that's a type of planned development allowed under the zoning ordinance. The purpose of planned commercial districts are to encourage quality site planning and design and site specific. So if this were to be approved, just like our other B5 districts, this property would be the only location for this specific B5 district. The property itself is located at the southern intersection of Harmony Lane and Melody Lane. It is, as stated, zoned R3. It is surrounded by commercial zoning to the north, west, and south, with B2 zoning to the north and west, and B3 zoning to the south, and then R3 residential zoning to the northeast to the east. The site previously had a single-family dwelling on it that was demolished in 2014. It had been vacant for a few years prior to that. The surrounding land use, there is commercial to the north and west and to the south, Orchard Bend Shopping Center to the northwest, and some financial institutions to the west and south, and then of course commercial along St. Charles Rock Road, and single-family residential to the northeast and to the east. I have a few pictures just for some background information. This is showing the property looking to the east from across Harmony Lane. This is from St. John's Bank property. The property, of course, is to the left of the white vinyl fence. This is actually taken from the property itself, looking to the, I think that would be northwest. That is the Orchard Bend Shopping Center across from Harmony Lane there at the distance. This is showing the property from further east on Harmony Lane, looking back towards St. Charles Rock Road. And the road going towards the left is Melody Lane. And this just shows a little bit better view of the site directly across the street from Harmony. So this is taken from kind of near the Guitar Center and Orchard Bend Shopping Center. On the left-hand side, that's Melody Lane, of course. Some background information on the, some information basically covered from the staff report that was distributed, as well as the proposal and then some of the planning and zoning analysis. So when some background on when the applicant approached city staff about this project, we discussed, what might be the appropriate direction moving forward, knowing that they wanted to, the goal was to build a one dentist practice in a one-story building. We talked about some of the different options when you're looking at commercial zoning. Of course, there's B2 across the street, there's B3 to the south. One of the concerns with those zoning districts is they allow a lot of land uses that would likely be too intensive for a site like this. They allow uses such as gas stations, financial institutions, restaurants. And we were aware that this property itself was really would not be able to handle that type of commercial activity. Yet we thought that some limited commercial activity would be appropriate here. So when looking at the surrounding commercial uses, and I use the term corridor commercial really to refer to what's, so what was proposed really was a site-specific zoning district that was geared towards offering some limited commercial activity while offering the highest amount of protection for the adjacent residential properties. So to summarize the proposed district regulations that staff coordinated with the applicant on, I just have a few bullet points, and then I have the actual slides with the actual specific language later if we need to refer to it at all. So just to summarize, it offers a limited amount of permitted uses and special uses. Really, the permitted uses limited to office and medical office with very strict development standards. It would have much higher building and parking setbacks than allowed in the B2 or B3 districts, which would push any development towards the existing commercial to the south and away from the existing residential uses to the northeast. It limited the building size to a maximum of a 2-story building and to a maximum of 5,000 square feet per floor, and then also restricted access. So the only access allowed would be one ingress and egress onto Harmony Lane, and any access to Melody would be prohibited. And then in addition, the proposed district would require a landscape buffer when adjacent to residential zone. So a 25-foot wide minimum landscape buffer with requirements for evergreens and deciduous trees. So this landscape buffer will be more strict than anything that the B2 or B3 district would require. So when reviewing the site, as I stated, the surrounding commercial uses, for example, on St. Charles Rock Road or corridor commercial, that really makes this property a lot less attractive for residential development and rather more suitable for some low-impact commercial uses that would operate with less potential negative impacts on the surrounding residential uses. This property is more of a transitional area, transitioning from the intensive commercial on the Rock Road towards residential as you drive away from the Rock Road, and that's where the B5 zoning district comes in. And that makes this site ideal for B5 zoning because you can craft a zoning district that is really specific to what this parcel is suitable for. And at the same time, it would allow for improvement of an undeveloped lot. I did want to touch on a few items in the comprehensive plan. I just have some paraphrased bullet points from the comprehensive plan. Among the goals in the comprehensive plan, it includes stabilize shopping and business districts and encourage infill. Some of the more specific objectives, one of them includes facilitate business recruitment and expansion. And then getting more specific in the implementation strategy of the comprehensive plan includes facilitate future reinvestment efforts and support economically sustainable and locally supportable businesses. In the comprehensive plan, there's a section that describes what the intent of the plan is, that it includes to prepare Bridgeton to respond to changing market demands, accommodate trends in land use, and take advantage of opportunities to compete for commercial businesses. So based on that, the proposal would be consistent with those goals and objectives. I just want to include a screenshot of this is from the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. You can see that it's depicted as single-family residential. However, this issue is addressed in this chapter of the comprehensive plan because it's always assumed that some of these areas that maybe are near the boundary of where it's commercial and residential, where they meet, it's assumed that you won't always have development proposals that match exactly what's proposed in the comprehensive plan. So the language in this chapter of the comprehensive plan kind of addresses this and states, and there's guidance for evaluating these type of proposals, such as this one. It includes evaluating it based on social, environmental, economic impacts on existing development and streets, as well as compatibility within the neighborhood. And it states to provide reasonable consideration when development proposals reflect marketplace demands, and also to consider burdens on public service, any other impacts, welfare of the community, etc. Reviewing that, the proposal is consistent with this guidance. The property is adjacent to both commercial zoning and land use as well as residential, but the proposed B5 district as written would allow for a reasonable transition from the corridor commercial on St. Charles Rock Road by providing more low-intensity commercial use while being sensitive to adjacent residential uses. And as stated before, some of the intensive commercial uses surrounding it make it not as attractive for single-family development. I did want to mention the site plan that was included in the staff report. This is what was submitted by the applicant. As stated in the report, they're proposing a dental practice for one dentist, a one-story, 3,600 square foot building with limited hours of operation. The site plan depicts the parking lot setbacks and building setbacks and landscape buffer that would be required in this B5 district. The building and parking area are meant to show the conceptual layout of what they're proposing. What they're proposing would comply with this B5 district. Of course, there could be maybe tweaks in the future as long as it complied with these setbacks. I did want to point out the parking lot setback proposed in the ordinance is actually 15 feet from right of way. So that red dashed line depicts the parking lot setback from Melody Lane. The previous version shows a 5 foot, but the district language actually shows 15 feet would be the requirement. And I just did want to mention this. So this shows the parking lot setbacks from the property lines. So these parking areas would have to be contained within this, the dashed line. This shows the building setback proposed, the red dashed line. So any proposed building would have to comply with these setbacks. And then this just shows the required landscape buffer adjacent to any residential of 25 feet. And of course, there's requirements for the types of trees. I have a specific language in here. I don't know. I wasn't planning on going through it word for word, but if anyone has any questions, I can touch on that. And that's all I have.
Very good. Questions from council, Mr. Bright? Councilmember Fetch.
Yeah, I guess this is the time to ask the questions. Mr. Greiton, in the information that was passed out to planning and zoning and to the city council, there was applicant's request and proposal. And in that request and proposal, it states, as stated in the application material, the dental office would be for the applicant's practice only. Additional staff would include one full-time hygienist, one part-time hygienist. Hours would be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Thursday, and Saturday 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. That is not anything. Is that something that will be standard if this is passed, or that is just him telling us what he plans on doing in the particular building?
That was what they stated their intent would be if they developed there. The request is to approve a new zoning district, so there's nothing that would state that they would be required to be limited to those hours.
Right.
So that wouldn't be anything you can do through a zoning.
Well, basically, that can be changed.
That could be changed. They could have.
Yeah, they can put 2 more dentists and 5. I mean, as in the future, they can do it. And I think that was the answer. I want the people to know that if they're thinking that it could just be one dentist and a couple of people, it can be changed in the future. That is not binding. Another thing that I ask you is the site plan. Any future development, if this was passed, would have to have the site plan, it'd have to fit into that site plan, right?
Correct, it would have to comply with the setbacks for both the building and the parking lot, it would have to comply with the limited square footage and height, but setback, just like any other zone.
Right, yeah, I mean, the site plan, so in a B5 district, there are other uses that can be done in there, and just so the public knows, I think you might have said it, is some of the uses that can be done with just B5 zoning is business or professional offices, medical office, medical or dental clinic, a church, public park could be in there, and accessories, uses, and buildings as defined in section 410. Now, those are items that can be added to that if they wanted to in the future.
Correct, they would be permitted use in that zoning district.
And that would be without coming back to the city council.
Correct.
And that could just be any of those uses could be approved just by staff.
Correct.
Now, if they want to come back to city council after this is zoned, there is such a thing as permitted land uses with special use permit. That would mean, folks, that they would have to come back to the city council. And those uses could be a daycare center and a retail center, a retail store. So they're, along with a barber shop and a beauty parlor. So those are uses that they could get in the future if the dentist went out of business and they had a one-story. They could also come back at that time, and if they needed a second floor, they could put it in, but it would also require coming back to council for, and everything would have to be according to the site plan. Okay, I just wanted to explain that so that the people know what is happening here, okay?
And
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Mr. Mayor, if I may comment on a couple of those questions.
Sure.
Regarding that, so when we get in a situation like this where it's a request for a rezoning for a specific use at the time, staff has to look beyond what they're proposing. Let's say hypothetically this would get approved, they build one dental practice, they're there for 10, 15 years, and then it's time to move on, and the property would maybe be up for sale or a building for rent. The reason for that list of uses, which is limited compared to any other zoning district, was really to take a look at what would be possibly suitable at this site. So the business office, professional office, medical office, those usually operate at a pretty low impact. Church and public park, those are included more for legal reasons. We can't prohibit churches in any zoning district or public park, so that's in there for legal reasons. Of course, any proposed use would have to comply with not only the setbacks and the landscape buffer, et cetera, but also with the parking regulations that are already in the zoning ordinance. The land uses with a special use permit, that was really looking at what types of businesses sometimes would you find it in close proximity to residential neighborhoods. So that's kind of why those three were included. And as you stated, it would require a special use permit if someone were to propose that down the road, which would require city council approval. That being said, if a council member looks through this proposed zoning district and they're comfortable with everything right now, but they maybe have an issue with a daycare center, now would be the time to maybe suggest removing it from this proposed zoning district. If someone's comfortable with everything else but not comfortable with that, just as an example. Now is the time where it's being proposed and it's not in effect at this point in time.
If you wanted to remove those, sir, do I still have the mic?
Is it a follow-up question to what you said?
Yes. If I wanted to remove that, would I do it tonight by asking the petitioner, or would you wait until we work on the ordinance, which would be at the next meeting?
I think at the next meeting, we can
Next
get the
meeting,
details.
okay. That's all.
Very good. Councilman Roy?
Yeah, I want to clarify, I know Mr. Peck said that they were open half a day on Saturdays. It's only one Saturday a month that they're open, a half a day. It's not every Saturday. And this dentist has been in Bridgeton since 1987 in business.
Well, that's not.
Hold on. We got to Keep it just to this.
Well,
You can be recognized later.
It was in here 1987. Now, has that, I know he's currently in the Don Coryell building, the old building between Mark Twain and Quick Trip. So he would like to stay in Bridgeton and, you know, build a nice new building. Now, he also said something about two-story buildings. Now, a medical center came up here to us once. It was a two-story, and we did turn that down. So I just wanted to clarify that, you know, he's already here for many years.
Finished? Councilmember Hine.
I just wanted to clarify, so if we want to make an amendment to the ordinance, it'll be at the second reading.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stell.
Yes, sir. I'm totally in favor of a dentist going in his office, you know, because I remember when it was a residential home, some of my cousins actually used to rent from there like 20 years ago. Nice wooden floors, nice wooden walls. Nice to see something possibly going in there. Now, recently, we passed other changes to allow this, because it says it can be medical. So this potentially could be another blood bank, like we got over on Banks Road in Lindbergh, in a residential area.
Well, I think I would need to do a little bit more research on that. One of the concerns would be with that is a blood bank or like a plasma donation center. I know that typically they are not looking for anything that's something like 5,000 square feet, and they typically are looking for something with a lot more parking. That's not to say that one committee wouldn't be interested in this, but I think based on the way those facilities typically operate, like we just saw, they're proposing a 19,000 square foot operation in Lindbergh with a lot of parking. That being said, one way to address it would be to clarify it in the proposed district and state medical office or dental, or medical clinic or dental clinic, and we could put excluding plasma donation facilities or blood donation facilities. That's always a possibility, but for specific.
The other one was in the process of passing certain kind of ordinances for medical marijuana. And so is that something that this could also fall into that same location, this close to residential homes, or do we have to put an exclusion on that also?
This actually, that would not require exclusion because medical marijuana facilities, as you'll see in the next public hearing, those are going to be specific uses listed in specific districts. So if it's not proposed in the B5 language, it wouldn't be allowed there. So that one wouldn't be, you wouldn't have to worry about that issue.
All right, that's fine.
Because a medical marijuana dispensary is not going to be classified in the same manner as a medical clinic or dental clinic.
It'd be
Separate
separate.
things. Yeah.
Further comments or questions from Brown Council to staff? Seeing none? Thank you. All right, just to repeat, 3 minutes for every speaker. We will alternate support, opposition, support, opposition. All right, so the first up is Tony Sekanic, who is in favor of the project.
I'm going to yield to my partner, Carolyn Larrix. If you don't mind.
Sure.
And I'll do rebuttal. Carolyn.
Ms. Larrick? Give us your name and address, please.
My name is Caroline Merritt. I'm with Sandberg Phoenix and Von Gown Card, 600 Washington Avenue, 15th floor, St. Louis, Missouri, 63101.
Very good.
And I'm here on behalf of Dr. Daniel, who's also here tonight in the second row. He's applied for the rezoning, and Zach has said, the site from R3 residential to B5 planned commercial district. This proposed B5 district allows for a commercial use that is compatible with adjacent residential lots while providing an appropriate transition between the B2 and B3 commercial lots and the residential lots on Melody Lane. Residents of Melody Lane and I believe other residential lanes around Harmony Lane around this proposed site have submitted a variety of questions. Really important, really pertinent questions that I would like to answer here. I think it gives a little bit of information and insight as to why this particular B5 zoning fits this lot. So one of the questions was, how are you blocking residents from commercial when you cannot put a fence on the corner Not only does the proposed district regulations require a landscaping buffer, a 25-foot landscaping buffer, but it is depicted in the site plans that's been submitted with the application, and that would be a sufficient buffer between the B5 site and the adjacent residential lots. The next question the residents asked is, what about deliveries and trash pickup noise? Since Dr. Bagnall's business is a dental office and it will be occupied by a single doctor with his proposed use, it's a low impact, low traffic site and low impact, low traffic use. Deliveries should only occur once a week. Post office, UPS, FedEx, no deliveries like a restaurant or a retail store would have, as well as trash pickup would only be once a week. Entrances and exits would only be located, the only curb cuts are on Harmony Lane. There would be no curb cuts on Melody Lane. There are sufficient parking spaces on the proposed on the site plan that would ensure that no street parking was required for Dr. Bagnall's patients. There are already, the residents noted that there are already 5 entrances and exits in a short distance already. Will this not cause more traffic problems on Harmony? Again, it's a low traffic, low impact use. Dr. Bagnall estimates no more than 3 patients per hour during the hours previously indicated, Monday through Thursday, 1 Saturday per month. How high is the building and what is the max height? Outside of what Zach has already indicated in the proposed district regulations and what they would allow, Dr. Bagnall's proposed use, as previously stated, 3,600 square foot, single story.
You need to kind of wrap up here, Ms. Laritz. You're about out of time. In fact, you're right at it right now. Have you got one last point?
No, just generally, I think that this proposed development and ordinance has been designed to protect the adjacent residential uses and residents, and that this is a great example of where city staff has worked diligently to protect the residents and align the business interests with those of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. This will be the first one in opposition. Tom Zelansky, I'm sorry, at 1358 Paul Meadows. Sorry if I butchered your name.
Everybody does it.
Since we're
Tansky. Okay. 5-8 Paul Meadows Court, 634. But yeah, everybody does it.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Basically, yeah, I'm opposed just for a few reasons. It's, I mean, no matter what, it will increase traffic. We've had a few accidents right outside of there already, between the Vantage, between the Guitar Center and St. John's Bank. Everybody's coming to go 7:30 to 8:30 to 9 o'clock, morning traffic, evening traffic. That place is just backed up traffic. And luckily, you'll get on the Rock Road, you may get 1, 2, 3 cars through. So now you're going to add a few more cars to that. You can be sitting on there forever. And not to be negative to his practice, but let's say he closes in 1, 2, 3 years. There are a number of buildings right now up and down the Rock Road that are empty. If something happens and this closes, now we have another empty building in Bridgeton. And right now it just doesn't look good up and down the Rock Road. There's so many of them. This is a chance that we could add another empty building. So I just don't think we need to take that chance. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sorry about the name.
Okay.
All right, this one will be in favor. Kalanda. Oh, Kalanda, we got you, so you're covered. Let me see if I've got any more that are in favor. I don't have any more in favor. Mr. Sakaning?
Yes.
All right.
Can I just do it as rebuttal at the end, or?
No, you have to do it 3 minutes. If you want to do it now, come up and give it 3 minutes, and then...
So I'm Tony Sakanek, and we represent the doctor. You know, I've represented a lot of dentists, and they generally practice by themselves. If you've noticed, when you go to your own dentist, most of them don't have multiple dentists. They do, they rarely have more than one dentist there at any time during the day. Dentists, when they get to this point in their practice, they yearn to be able to own their own building, because their retirement is going to be the sale of their practice in the building. In my own subdivision, just 5 miles away from here, I solicited having, and did the zoning, to have a dentist and a bank in front of my subdivision to stabilize the neighborhood. You know, we in North County
yield to just the whims of people to move their businesses west or south, and we just can't get enough services in North County. We're fortunate here that this dentist wants to keep his practice in this community, and I think this is the type of stabilization we need. People should really think hard before they just get up here and kick somebody down who's been in the community. And for all intents and purposes, sure, traffic's going to increase when you're taking it from a vacant lot. A vacant lot that, now will be maintained to the standards that someone would be proud about because they're running a community business. This is the type of business you can't get just overnight. We're lucky to have this opportunity.
Thank you. All right, this one's in opposition. Ron Holland, 3864 DePaul Meadows. Just give us your name again, Ron.
Ron Holland, 3864 DePaul Meadows, the subdivision right there by all the house. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, Mr. Mayor, we would ask you not to pass this. There are several things this is going to affect. Bus stops there for the kids to get on the bus, creates more traffic. That's going to be a danger for the bus stop. As Tom pointed out, we got traffic backing on the road. When they come out of Vantage Square Union Town, they pop up over the hill right up. You have to stop, slam on your brakes because they're out in the middle of the road already. There are abundant opportunities up and down St. Charles Rock Road for a dentist office. We have several dentist offices in the city of Bridgeton now. There's one at the corner of McKelvey and Rock Road. There's John Ford Hill that she was talking about. So a natural bridge. There's a dentist office already. There's property that's for sale on St. Charles Rock Road that is already commercial. So we don't need to change it. We need more residential area. We need to find a way to get some villas built there or something that had properties for people to move into the city of Bridgeton. I realize that commercial property brings in revenue, but so does the citizens of Bridgeton. So I would ask you to not pass this. Thank you much for your time.
Thank you for attending. I have no more in support, so I'll just go through the opponents. Chris Egan, 3861 DePaul, Meadows, Fulton, Egan. Let's give us your name again.
Greetings, Chris Egan, 3861 DePaul, Meadows Court.
Thank you.
Okay, to the second what Tom says too about the traffic and the congestion, it was very worse. But the other thing is, why doesn't a place need to be built when there's so many vacancies up and down Rock Road and Mitchell Bridge? Okay, I was checking it out, and there's the Best Buy. And that place right there is one vacancy. The Rock Road Plaza, there's two. Northwest Plaza, there's many. The Rock Road Center, right next to Brady, there's 9 shops there. Only 4 of them are occupied right now. Orchard's Bend, how obvious, there's 3 of them there. There's the old Christian bookstore. Degrees Lighting Place on the Rock Road. That's been sitting there vacant forever, that property. Okay, there's one next to the bowling alley, there's 2 of them by the mobile station, and one of those Friends Bar. But the other thing is, Bridgeton Crossing. There's 10 vacancies across the street, including the old Blockbuster that's been there for 5 years or more. And one other thing, if a doctor, anybody needs to build something, I'm sure the property is bought, but what about National Bridge in McGilvey, where Tony's restaurant used to be? That's been sitting there for probably 10 years vacant. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for attending. Again, only opponents, Teresa Fisher.
I was yesterday last, but I didn't want to know if everybody's up to speed.
Yours is the last card.
I'm the last card. Okay, can somebody come in and help me, because this unfortunately is a problem I have this weekend. Okay, so you already have the 17 reasons I sent everybody.
Need to speak up in the mic and give us your name again, Ms. Fisher.
I'm Teresa Fisher.
Very good.
Okay, so everybody did receive the certified letters.
I got it.
The 17 issues.
Got it hold right now.
Now, as we had a big rainstorm, we already had the Harmony already flooded. And we already have a flooding issue and drainage issue already. Now, if we put more concrete down, there's going to be more flooding issues with the grass soaking in. Also, the subdivision, which is on Melody, have had several homes flooded, and also businesses have been flooded also. Now, with this property, this parcel that goes commercial, what's going to end up happening is that instead of soaking the ground, it will end up causing more flooding problems and more drainage problems will break down on Harmony. And I actually did take pictures of it earlier. I have 3 minutes is just not enough. It would be nice. I'm a fast talker normally, but 3 issues, 3 minutes is not near enough for all the issues we have. First of all, I want to know how shrubbery and trees are going to affect the residents. Am I supposed to take a branch from one of the trees? How am I going to be protected? How are our children going to be protected? Because the bus goes right there by a business. Does anybody want their children to be picked up right where there is a business? As far as crime goes, does Venice not have medicines? Do they not have, what is it called, oxygen and when somebody needs to calm down, the sedations? That, I'm not shy. Can you say what it's called? Yeah, so the dentist has things that criminals do want, and so that would cause that would be a problem because people's houses are broken into with medicines already, and that to me is a big issue. I'm pretty sure I'm out of my 3 minutes. I guess what I'm going to do is send another certified.
You got 1 more minute. You got 1 more minute if you want.
I have so many issues with it. It's unsafe. First of all, was there any attempt really to sell commercial? Because I know about land because I have properties, and $250,000 is the asking price. Does that seem like anybody wants to buy that to put a home on? That was not sellable to put commercial. I mean, put residential on there. So they set it up to make it commercial already. And so what it amounts to is that what you can do, if you don't want an empty parcel, is put 2 houses, lay back or condos or villas, just like the rest of Harmony, except for 1 parcel. The rest of Harmony, houses are set back. So people will be willing to buy the houses set back. Did the gentleman who just spoke for it, did he not say that he was for commercial going right across the street from him? So that's how it tells me that then it is sellable to residential. Has it really been able to be sold residential? Or was it set up to go commercial all along?
Okay. You need to wrap up. Any last comment? Bill? Okay. Thank you very much. That will conclude this public hearing on the proposed rezoning of property at 3710 Harmony Lane from R3 single-family dwelling to B5 planned commercial district. I would at this time, before we get into the next one, we did have an issue came up here on planning and zoning, and I'd ask the city attorney to address that issue.
Yes, sir. So I think there have been a few questions about the number of votes that would be required from the city council to pass this in light of the recommendation that came forward from the planning commission. So the mayor had asked me to address that. So the state statute requires that planning commission in any city within the state contain between 7 and 15 members. We currently, or before tonight, I guess, have 8 members on our planning commission. So we meet the state statute. However, the city's charter in section 6.07A says that the planning commission will consist of 13 members. The relevance of that is that section 9.01 of the charter applying to zoning changes states that the affirmative vote of a majority of all members of the Planning Commission is required for a positive recommendation, a favorable recommendation on a zoning change. So the question then becomes, okay, if a majority of all members of the Planning Commission, does that mean a majority of those who are currently seated, not counting the vacancies? So if you have a Planning Commission of 8 members, 5 vacancies, does that mean 5 votes will yield a favorable recommendation, or is it some greater number? And the answer, this was addressed in 1986 by the Missouri Court of Appeals in a case called Brady v. Zitch. The court in that case, dealing with the same issue before the City of St. Louis Board of Aldermen, ruled that language stating all the members refers to the full authorized board. So in this case, the full authorized board by our charter is 13 members. A majority of 13 would be 7 votes. So our charter requires 7 votes in order to have a favorable recommendation to the City Council. This particular application received 5 favorable votes at the Planning Commission, so obviously that's fewer than 7. So then the question is, what happens here? A 3/4 vote of the entire membership of the City Council is necessary in order to approve a zoning change if there is not a favorable recommendation, so that would be 6 votes. We have looked, I think the question had arisen as to whether this has come up previously in the city. We've looked at the last 3 years. There's not been a circumstance over the last 3 years where a matter received fewer than 7 votes at the Planning Commission and then received fewer than 6 votes at the City Council. So it is, no action, at least in the time period last 3 years that we've looked at, while there's been less than a full Planning Commission, has failed to receive the proper number of votes.
Correct. Questions? Councilmember Sattel.
Yes, I have a question on that. You said nothing in the last 3 years, yet we just had some just in the past 2 months about the Al's Greenhouse, where we had a couple negative votes from the planning and zoning, and yet we only had 4 council members, a 4-4 tie that went through. Wouldn't that then require more votes?
If you recall, Councilmember Sattel, that was on the planning and zoning portion that passed. What failed on it was the plan itself. There were 2 separate votes on that issue.
Correct.
Yeah. So
one carries the weight.
So I think you're referring to, that was probably the rezoning. I don't know. In June, there have been 3 votes that are relevant for this discussion. On June 5th, Bill 1906 was a rezoning, received 5 votes at the Planning Commission. It was a 7 votes at the Planning Commission and received 5 votes at the City Council. So it received the 7 necessary to authorize fewer than supermajority at the Planning Commission. I think that's the vote you're talking about, because the mayor broke the tie at the City Council. So it received 7 votes at the Planning Commission. On that same agenda that evening, there was a special use permit. It was Bill 1907. That received 6 votes from the City Council. It was favorable vote 6-2. The only other thing I can think of that you might be addressing was not a zoning change or a special use permit. There was a preliminary plan vote at that same
It was all
meeting.
presented together as one package, one, and then we voted the other. Was the planning and zoning, and they said, no, we don't like the preliminary plan. But they did not have 7 votes on that, the second half of that vote.
Are you finished?
I'm just asking.
Yeah, well, you're not letting me answer. So the answer to your question is, that was a motion on a preliminary plan, I think that you're referring to. It followed a zoning change, a bill, but I just explained to you what the vote was on that. And the same rule does not apply, because there's no discretion. If you were told at that meeting that by the zoning administrator that preliminary plan satisfied the subdivision ordinance. Once you are told that the preliminary plan satisfies the subdivision ordinance, it's a ministerial act to approve it. There's no authority to vote against it. And I can refer you to case Schaefer v. Cleveland from 1992 in the state of Missouri, where it says specifically, where a subdivision plat meets requirements of the city ordinance, municipal planning and zoning commission and city council do not have authority to refuse to approve the subdivision plat. Therefore, it's a ministerial act to approve the plat. So again, as I said, we have not had an instance in the last 3 years, which is as far back as we've looked, where, in my opinion, there's been an issue contrary to what I'm telling you now.
So it's more of a mistake on how they voted at the planning and zoning. They should have matched their same votes, because you mentioned to us that we're supposed to match exactly how we voted on the other one and not have a change. Yet they actually, at planning and zoning, had two different kind of votes.
Well, no, so I think what I told, and what I told Mr. Purcell after the meeting, because Mr. Purcell changed his vote, and he acted properly in that case, because once and you know, we're talking about a matter that's already passed, obviously, a month ago, but once that zoning change passed with a specific site plan attached to it, that the preliminary plan motion that followed was for the exact same plat that was attached as a site plan to the zoning change. At that point, once the zoning was approved, the action to approve the preliminary plan became ministerial, because it was the exact same plan that was attached to the zoning ordinance. Mr. Purcell changed his vote, recognizing that because there was no longer any grounds to vote against that. Some others didn't. I mean, that's fine. You have the prerogative to vote how you like. But fortunately, it received enough votes to pass. If it hadn't, we would have had a problem.
Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Lindenbroker, for your clear and concise explanation of that. And the way I see it is that we need to either, number one, revisit our charter and look at that 13-member composition of our planning and zoning, or we've got to make sure we staff with 13. That's going to handcuff this council. You know, so we've got some work to do on this. And
we are working on getting appointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I can't remember a time when we've had 13.
Neither can I. That's what I'm saying.
That's kind of a large number.
And this having 7 is going to really, I mean, it's not the way it should be. Let's put it that way.
Anything else? For the audience's sake, here's what happens. Because the way this came out of Planning and Zoning, it requires 6 council members to vote in favor of this proposal. If 6 council members don't support it, then it goes down to defeat. What we were proposing tonight is only introduction. So, and then it will be tabled. So I want everybody to understand, that's the normal course of procedure here. Is you introduce, and when we don't, unless it's an emergency or something that's really important that we have to get to right away, we would do introduction and adoption. We are not doing that tonight on this proposal. This will come back. Provided it gets the votes to approve on introduction, it will come back at our first meeting in August. But it requires 6 council members to vote in favor for this to pass. So everybody understands. That's what the attorney was talking about. Councilmember Finch was late at this because I'd like to move on to the next hearing.
Just one
very quickly.
Everybody heard the mayor say that we needed people for planning and zoning. There's a lot of residents here tonight. If you'd like to serve on the board or commission, submit your name to the mayor. We need some help. Thank you.
Thank you. We are closing this hearing. We will go on to our second hearing. You're always welcome to stay for this one too, and stay for the rest of the council meeting. This is on a petition to amend multiple sections of Bridgeton zoning ordinances to modify definitions and regulations related to medicinal marijuana facilities in the city of Bridgeton. We will have a presentation from Mr. Greitens, and then open it up for our comments from the public. Mr. Greitens.
Mr. Mayor, so I have some slides to provide some background on medical marijuana facility and state law, etc. And then I have some slides that summarize the proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. I'm not going to go through the ordinance word for word. We did that at Planning Commission. This went to Planning Commission twice. The first one was Planning Commission as a discussion item. We went through the proposal in detail. detail. There were a few minor questions that we addressed, and then Planning Commission held a public hearing on it on July 8th, and they voted on it, and the recommendation was passed by a vote of 7-0. So first, some background information, as many of you are aware. Amendment 2 was passed by Missouri voters in November 2018, and passing of Amendment 2 authorized the state medical marijuana program to move forward. The provisions of that program are, the way it's set up in the state law, are to be implemented by the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. And what Amendment 2 does is it allows qualified patients with certain medical conditions to use medical marijuana under supervision of their doctors. So one of the key elements here is that there's 4 facilities that Amendment 2 allows: cultivation facilities, manufacturing facilities, testing laboratories, and dispensaries. So dispensaries are really kind of the retail face of this, so to speak. So as I stated, the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, that's the division of the state that's tasked with implementing the rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations really include two elements, generally 2 elements: registering qualified patients and caregivers, and then licensing and certifying the types of facilities allowed. How does this apply to municipalities? The state in Amendment 2 and in the rules and regulations have made it clear that municipalities and local governments may not ban such facilities, but that they may regulate the time, place, and manner of operation. These regulations may not conflict with the state rules and regulations, and they use the term undue burden. Such regulations may not create an undue burden on such facilities to operate. Some other general information: the state has, in their information, stated the number of licenses is going to be limited. Initially, it will be set at 1 dispensary per 32,000 residents, and a lot of this was really done by, they looked at congressional districts. The goal of the state through this program was to allow for patient access. Patient access was intended to be a high priority, and that's the reason for creating wide distribution throughout the state. A couple other notes. I don't know if anyone has chosen to read through any of those regulations. They're very detailed. They have very strict security requirements and other requirements, especially for dispensaries. And in addition, you probably heard that there is potential for some tax revenue to be generated through these facilities. So just to summarize, when I talk about time, place, and manner, that's really the when, the where, and the how these facilities may operate. That's what cities, that's what local governments may regulate through their zoning. So to summarize what we've had to do, and I just want to mention, I work very closely with Mr. Lindbroker and his office on this. We wouldn't be able to do it without them. I kind of put together the general idea, and their office really put together the details and fine-tuned it. Hush Blackwell does have a firm in Denver that specializes in medical marijuana facilities, so that really was quite helpful. What we did was add definitions for new terms that need to be defined. We added regulations for such facilities, so these are the standards for them to develop and operate in Bridgeton, and then to include or add these facilities to the zoning districts where they would be allowed. So I just have a few slides to just kind of summarize each of those sections. So our definitions would include, we'd be adding new terms to our definition section. DHSS, that's the Department of Health and Senior Services. All 4 facilities, of course, defining marijuana-infused products, also defining primary caregiver, qualifying patient, and then also, since we refer to the state medical marijuana regulations throughout the ordinance, that would also be defined. Then we get into the standards and regulations for the development and operation of such facilities. This would be in section 410-050. This is the same section where we have supplementary regulations for things like adult bookstores, medical service centers, things of that nature. So first, we have a section that addresses standards that would apply to all medical marijuana facilities, all 4 of those new types of facilities being introduced. And just to summarize, it would require compliance with state regulations, of course. Then we have buffers, 500 feet, they'd have to be at least 500 feet from any church, school, or daycare. While we're on this topic, the state rules and regulations state that municipalities may require a buffer around these three types of land uses up to 1,000 feet, but they can go as low as 0 feet. Cities are not obligated to require a buffer at all, so a city could choose to have no buffer at all from these types of uses. We took a look at this, we took a look at the situation in Bridgeton. We have several churches, daycares, and schools. We thought 500 feet was a reasonable number to offer some protection for those types of uses, but also not close off the entire commercial zone districts to any type of development for these facilities. One other thing I want to point out, it states measured as prescribed in state regulations. This is not a parcel line to parcel line measurement. That makes it a little bit complicated. It refers to a route in which one may lawfully travel by foot. So that would kind of require case-by-case analysis of measuring the distance from these types of facilities. The next one, including a 500-foot buffer required from any other medical marijuana facilities. The next bullet point really addresses the basic nuisance regulations that restrict noise, dust, fumes, odor, etc. Another element included in this requirement would be to demonstrate that odor mitigation system is installed. The next one would require to operate only within a fully enclosed building with nothing visible from the exterior. This is basically to prohibit any type of outdoor activity in these types of facilities. The next one, state issued license displayed at all times. Oh, and I missed disposal of waste and secured receptacle. This was also addressed in the state regulations, but this would require additional provisions to require a secure location to dispose of any waste from, for example, a cultivation facility. There are stems and excess parts of the plant to be disposed of properly. No on-site consumption, no loitering, vault or safe required. Prohibiting sale or consumption of alcohol, and of course, to be required to possess a current city business license at all times. So those would, of course, the details are in your packet, but those would apply to all medical marijuana facilities. The next one is specific to medical marijuana dispensaries. They operate a little bit differently than cultivation and manufacturing, so they require some additional provisions to be adhered to. Limiting the hours of operation. In the original version, staff and the attorney's office, we proposed limiting hours from 8 a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. At the planning commission meeting, they made a motion to revise it from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. The next one addresses separation between the waiting area and where the products are delivered to the patient. Must be separated by a solid wall or door obstructing view. The next one, no products may be visible outside of the facility. The next one we have to include because currently devices of paraphernalia would be prohibited in establishments. What this would do is it would allow a dispensary to also sell a pipe, for example, or other paraphernalia, a device for people to consume the medical marijuana. And the next few are pretty straightforward. Prohibiting operating on a trailer or cargo container or motor vehicle, limited to a permanent fixed structure, no delivery services, of course, and then no sales would be able to be made to customers in cars, so no type of drive-through or anything like that. If you look through the state rules and regulations, the requirements for dispensaries for security are very strict and very detailed. These are going to be required to be very secure facilities. Next, because the passage of Amendment 2 did allow for residential cultivation, we thought it was a good idea to address this in zoning. So basically, Amendment 2 allows it. There are requirements in the state law that residential cultivation, someone proposing would have to abide by. The main reason we wanted to include in zoning is that way it gives the city the ability to make sure that a person who does have their license from the state can notify the city that this activity is lawfully taking place. So what it would require is that any type of residential cultivation would be required to occur only in the residence of the primary caregiver or qualifying patient and solely for the use of the qualifying patient. To these individuals would have to get their certification from the Department of Health and Human Services. A few other elements, admission of fumes not allowed out of the building. You would have to comply with any other requirements of the state laws and regulations. They would be required to notify the city clerk to prove that they're eligible for this activity. We will prepare a form that they can fill out. Basically, this is to make sure that they have the ability to notify law enforcement that the cultivation is taking place lawfully through the state Department of Health and Human Services licensing process. And then the last item would just allow residential consumption, because that's not currently allowed. This allows it if they're licensed by the state, and then also in a manner that no smoke or odor would be allowed to exit the residence. So that covers the standards for operation development and also residential cultivation. Then the last section, of course, is what districts would this be allowed. I just broke it down by the 4 types of facilities. Cultivation facilities would be limited to our B4 and M1, B4, M1, and M2, our A rural district, and then a select few M3 planned manufacturing districts. So these are basically our manufacturing districts throughout the city. Cultivation facilities would require a special use permit because there are certain elements of this type of operation that warrant further review by city council. Medical marijuana infused products manufacturing facility would be in the exact same districts as the cultivation facility, but they would also require a special use permit due to potential impacts that require review by city council. Next is the medical marijuana testing facilities. This also was included in the same districts as the cultivation and the manufacturing facilities. The only difference is that they would not require a special use permit to be permitted by right. One of the reasons for this is we currently allow other testing facilities in these zoning districts by right, so there's no reason to not allow the same for a medical marijuana testing facility. And then lastly, the medical marijuana dispensary facilities. This is more the retail side of it. Some of the information from the state discussed how they should be considered similar to that of a pharmacy. So these would be allowed in our B1, B2, B3, B4 districts, M1 and 2, and then a select few B5 planned commercial districts and M3 districts. It would be permitted by right with no special use permit required. Now, of course, all of these facilities would be required to adhere to the list of standards that I had on the few previous slides. So that's everything on the proposed language. I did include some maps. I'll go through these quickly. This one, what I wanted to do, this goes back to, we talked about the 3 facilities that the state law states municipalities may provide a buffer from: churches, daycares, and schools. What this map shows is a 500-foot buffer around the parcels where all the churches, daycares, and schools are located in Bridgeton. Of course, we don't have any north of 270, so this is all south of 270 in the southern portion of Bridgeton. One thing I do want to just point out again, the 500-foot buffer is not from the parcel line. I did this more for mapping purposes to show where those facilities are. This is what a buffer of 500 feet from the parcel line would look like, but it would be much less than that because it's walking distance from the building to building for some of them. But I just want to show 2 areas. The main reason I want to show this too is where some of these districts are. So a B2, a B3, etc. This is where these are areas that would be attractive for dispensaries. This highlights where our churches, schools, and daycares are, but this kind of highlights Lindbergh and St. Charles Rock Road. You see the B2 and B3 districts. These are areas that would be attractive for dispensaries, for example. B2, B3, etc. These would not allow cultivation facilities, manufacturing. I think those would be more towards, there'd be more interest in the properties north of 270 for those types of facilities. And then this also shows more like B2 area. These are areas that would be more attractive for dispensaries. Again, this is not what the buffer would be. We have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis, measuring walking distance. I just wanted to conclude also just for your reference, it's kind of hard to show an entire zoning map on a slide just because of the way our city is oriented. But just to show, again, our B2, B3, B4 districts tend to be located near Lindbergh and St. Charles Rock Road, and our M1, M2 districts, M3 districts tend to be in the northern and western part of the city, north of 270. And that's really, I think, where you'll see interest from cultivation and manufacturing facilities. So I broke it up into 3 parts, in case we need to refer to this, in discussion. So that's all I have. If anyone has any questions.
Questions of Mr. Greitens? Councilmember Zimmer?
Maybe you can help me out, I'm just trying to grasp the 500 feet distance. If we're regulated, tightly regulated, behind locked doors, and they have to be certified to come in and have a license, why do we need 500 feet from the schools, churches, and church?
Sure, good question.
School daycare and churches, what are we afraid of?
We discussed that in detail, that you can kind of go anywhere from 0 to 1,000. I think partially because in some of the material distributed by the state, they do talk about how there is some information out there about protecting young people from exposure. And I understand what you're saying, that these aren't going to be secure buildings where it's not going to be visible from the exterior, but still kind of providing some level of protection from any exposure for young people. That really is part of it. And then the 500 feet, we thought 1,000 feet was too restrictive, so we don't, this is an opportunity for some redevelopment and for some revenue, so we didn't want to go as far as 1,000 feet. Using the measurement of walking distance, it's going to be a lot less of a buffer around those properties, so it's not going to be as restrictive as the 500 feet shown. But that was kind of the reason, unless Mr. Lindbergh or anything else to add to that.
No, it's just, it's a policy decision. It can be, as Mr. Greitens said, anywhere from 0 to 1,000. But ultimately, that's open for your decision. Yeah.
I understand that. I'm just wondering what's the fear that we have that we need the distance at all if it's regulated so tightly.
I don't think there was.
I don't know. This is new to me.
Yeah, I don't think there was any particular fear. I think that we looked at sort of figuring out where to go with this. We looked at ordinances from a number of that have been passed by a number of cities in this area. We looked at Denver. We looked at cities where it's been permissible for a longer period of time. I think I can't recall any place that we looked that didn't have any buffer at all. Our buffer, our suggested buffer that's in the language in front of you of 500 feet, I think is less than what most of the cities around here are doing. But frankly, it's pretty arbitrary.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hine?
Thank you, Mayor. Can we limit the number of each facility? Did you say that?
No, that will be addressed through the state licensing and regulations. The only thing that, in terms of limiting, would be the buffer. And specifically the 500 feet from other facilities. That could potentially limit them. But in terms of us limiting a number, kind of like what the city regulations do for payday loan establishments, we do that, but we can't do anything like that because it's state requirements.
Okay.
So no, it does not.
When you say daycare, does that include adult daycare facilities also?
It does not. The state regulations are specific to children's daycare.
Okay. And then for the chief, can I ask him a question? Or?
Sure.
Do you anticipate any increase in violence or crime that is going to necessitate additional officers come on board?
Since this is not a recreational use, this is strictly a medical, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Norris?
Yes, I just want to clear that. In here it says one dispensary for approximately 32 Missouri residents. So we would only get one dispensary, or is that?
Good question, and I apologize for any confusion on that because that's come up a couple times. That was really kind of the goal of the state in terms of broad distribution of these facilities. Their idea was that patients would have access, and they kind of came to a 1 per 32,000 That's based on the number of licenses they're going to issue for dispensaries. So the state will be issuing 192 licenses for dispensaries. Some of the material reference distributing by congressional districts, because those are also by population as well. So naturally, there will be more dispensaries in the St. Louis area because there's more people here. But in terms of numbers, I think the best way to look at it is ignore municipal boundaries. We have a pretty high concentration of people in Northwest County, for example. I don't think that necessarily means because Bridgeton has just under 12,000 people that we're not going to have one, or we're only going to have one. We could have 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how many people are applying for licenses in Bridgeton. That was more to show that's kind of the state's target goal, to try to have one dispensary for every 30,000 residents, so there's higher prioritization of patient access. So sorry for any confusion on that.
Councilmember Sotelo.
Yes, that 500 limit to another location, will that go across our city lines, including Maryland Heights or St. Anne or Hazelwood? I'm just curious, if St. Anne had one right at our border in St. Anne, do we have to count that because it's closer, or because you just said ignore municipal boundary lines? I'm just kind of curious on our part.
And that was more reference to the distribution. If somebody built one in Northwest Plaza that was right next to the city boundary, and then someone wanted to do the same thing, that 500-foot would apply. It would apply.
We have to look at that, so you have
We would have to
to
look
go
at that.
further down Lindbergh to get a further distance and not conflict with a church or anything.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councilmember Purcell.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one comment and then a question. I understand that this passed in November and the voters had their say. I also understand that this is medical and not recreational. That being said, I would be in favor of 1,000 feet. I would not be in favor of lowering it under the 500 feet because I don't want a dispensary right next to my son's daycare. I don't want a dispensary right next to a school bus stop. I don't want a dispensary right next to an elementary school. That's just my opinion, but if anybody wants to lower it, I will obviously oppose that. My question is, I noticed in some of your slides, you mentioned that part of the ordinance says that any odors or vapors or any consumption of stuff, I guess, isn't supposed to leave the building or the residence. And I guess this was for at home, like people that are consuming at home. I guess my question is, how do we prevent that from happening? Right? Like if a door opens, doesn't air go in and out? And if I call because my neighbor is doing it and I smell a strong odor, are we going to have a penalty?
I think the answer to that, I'll help Mr. Greitens on that. I think the reference to odors and everything like that was more in reference to manufacturing and cultivation, not to the dispensaries. So you cannot, because someone is using it, they have the proper prescription, you cannot go in there, the chief can't have the police officers go in there and arrest the individual because it leaves out of his open window and you happen to be next door and smell it. That's my understanding, perhaps the city attorney.
That's right. With respect to use, I mean, one thing that the proposed ordinance does prohibit exterior use. It prohibits use at the dispensary, those sorts of things. But beyond that, how a person who receives a prescription or a certification to use it, how they use it at home, we don't regulate. Now, we do regulate odors leaving what are referred to as medical marijuana facilities, the dispensaries, the testing facilities, the cultivation facilities, the medical marijuana infused manufacturing facilities. And in that respect, I mean, it's we have those types of standards that apply to other uses sort of along in our nuisance code. And so it'd be the similar. It probably doesn't get enforced unless there are complaints or unless it's, such a problem that it's readily noticeable. But the framework is in place to enforce it if it becomes a nuisance.
I appreciate the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Further questions, Mr. Greitens? I don't see any. Thank you, Zach. I only have one card, and this one's not really in favor or opposition. It's kind of a neutral stance. Jamie Grigsby? Is Jamie still there? Come on up. Just give us your name again, Jamie.
I'm Jamie Grigsby. I'm a student at SID in in mass communications, and this is a story project that I was going to work on. I'm not even sure how this works. I was wondering if I could have a question, like ask a question and maybe get a little bit of information.
Maybe after the council meeting, yeah, you can come back and ask us a question then.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing on medicinal marijuana licensing in the city of Bridgeton. Move on with the rest of the agenda tonight, which we're down to item 3, Councilmember Hine.
Move for second consideration for liquor license application of Gloria Mexican Restaurant Incorporated, 12283 Natural Bridge Road. Nicole Awotsi, Managing Officer.
Second. Motion's made and seconded for our full liquor and Sunday license for the Gloria Mexican Restaurant at 12283 Natural Bridge Road.
This is an existing business, but they are in the process of expanding. As of now, they are still a few weeks away from final approval, but wanted to have the liquor license in place for their opening. The liquor license will be issued only when they receive the final approval from Public Works Department, who will notify them. They have never had a liquor license before, but are now applying for full liquor and Sunday license. So the police department did a background check and found no wanteds or warrants, and gives full approval from their perspective. So I'd like to ask for passing of this liquor license.
Motion's made and seconded. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummer?
Aye.
Mr. Hine?
Aye.
Mrs. Norris? Aye. Mr. Purcell?
Aye.
Mr. Patel?
Aye.
Mr. Zimmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Abram?
Aye.
Mr. Fetch?
Aye. By your vote of 8-0, you've approved a full liquor and Sunday license for the Gloria Mexican Restaurant. On to perfection of bills. Councilmember Abram, item 4.
Move for second reading of Bill 6207.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for second reading of Bill 6207. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? That motion carries. Councilmember Abram.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, application number 19-PZ-07, establishing a special use permit for adult daycare center to an adult daycare facility located at 4202 to 4204 Bonneville Drive.
Second.
Move that bill number 6207 become ordinance number 19-10.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for Bill 6207 to become ordinance 19-10. Councilmember Abram?
Yes, for, the special, public hearing on this, I think most of the questions were answered. I think the location is a good location where they want to put this, and apparently there's a need for adult daycare centers. Now I think a lot of people are, they take care of their moms or their dads or whatever, and they need to get out. I did have a question on it though. I did not know whether they could take them just for one day or if it had to be a full-time. But I assume that it's a full-time, So, but I am going to vote to approve this, so.
Okay, it's a special use permit, so we'll have to go through the...
Right. Okay.
Further comments or questions? Councilmember Abram.
Move to table Bill 6207.
Second. Motion's made and seconded to table Bill 6207. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Councilmember Abram.
Move that the proposed use set forth in Bill 6207 be determined to promote the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the people of the city of Bridgeton in accordance with and in the accomplishment of the comprehensive zoning plan of the city, taking into consideration the effect of such building or use on traffic conditions, fire safety, the character of the neighborhood, the general welfare of the community, and public utilities.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded.
I find as a
Go ahead.
I find this fact the proposed use will have no adverse effect on the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the people of Bridgeton with respect to traffic conditions, car safety, the character of the neighborhood, the general welfare of the community, or public utilities. My vote is aye.
Very good. Councilmember Norris?
Concur and vote aye.
Councilmember Zimmer?
Concur and vote aye.
Councilmember Sittell?
I concur and vote aye.
Councilmember Purcell?
I concur and vote aye.
Councilmember Grimmer?
Concur and vote aye.
Councilmember Fetch?
Concur and vote aye.
Councilmember Hine?
Concur and vote aye.
Move to suspend council rules and remove Bill 6207 from the table.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to suspend council rules, removing Bill 6207 from the table. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries.
Move Bill 6207 become ordinance number 19-10.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for Bill 6207 to become ordinance 19-10. Further comment or question? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Hine?
Aye.
Mrs. Norris?
Aye.
Mr. Purcell?
Aye.
Mr. Sittell?
Aye.
Mr. Zimmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Abram?
Aye.
Mr. Fetch?
Aye.
Mr. Grimmer?
Aye. Is that it? By your vote of 8-0, you approved Bill 6207 to become ordinance 19-10. Congratulations, good luck with your business. Councilmember Hine?
Yes, move for first reading, no, second reading, I'm sorry, Bill number 6208.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for second reading of Bill 6208. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Councilmember Hine.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, amending Chapter 110, Section 110.2.0 of the Bridgeton Code of Ordinances by adjusting certain court costs. I'd like to make a motion that that Bill number 6208 become ordinance 19-11.
Second.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion's made and seconded. Bill 6208, to become ordinance 19-11. Further comment or question?
Most of these court costs, I understand, are state-related. They go to the state of Missouri. There's really, I think, only one on here that's increased that the city of Bridgeton gets the revenue from. So I'd like to ask for favorable approval of this ordinance.
Further comments or questions?
Yeah, just one question.
Councilmember Fetch.
I noticed when I looked at the existing ordinance that there were 3 additional items on there, like for warrants, regular registration, and each, and another item, I forget what it was, but have those been eliminated and no longer allowed?
That is correct.
Is that right? They're not shuffled off in some other section? Thank you.
Councilmember Purcell.
Thank you, Mayor. I think when we had our mid-year budget meeting, one of the things that was brought up was raising, some of the fines associated with, say, speeding tickets and different things like that to try to curb that problem that we have in the city. My understanding, though, from talking to the court clerk, is on this bill, the only change is what Mr. Hine mentioned, is like a $7 fee that's being imposed by the state. And I don't have all the particulars in front of me, and I'm going to get them wrong off the top of my head, I'll tell you that right up front. My understanding, though, is that fee is currently being challenged in the courts, and should it come down as that fee is unconstitutional, we would have to change the ordinance to eliminate that fee. Is that correct?
That's a pretty fair assessment of it, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Norris? Aye. Mr. Purcell?
Aye.
Mr. Sittell?
Aye.
Mr. Zimmer?
Aye.
Mrs. Abram?
Aye.
Mr. Fetch?
Aye.
Mr. Grimmer?
Aye.
Mr. Hine?
Aye.
By your vote of 8-0, you approve Bill 6208 to become ordinance 19-11. Consideration of new bills. Councilmember Abram.
Move for first reading of Bill 6209.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for first reading of Bill 6209. Councilmember Abram.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, application number 19-PZ-06, to rezone approximately .93 acres of land located at 3710 Harmony Lane from R3 Single Family Dwelling District to B5 Planned Commercial District. Move to table.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to table Bill 6209. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. That one is tabled until the next meeting. Councilmember Avon, item 7.
Move for first reading of bill number 6210.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for first reading of Bill 6210. Councilmember Avon.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bridgeton, Missouri, amending Chapter 410 of the Bridgeton Code of Ordinances, creating definitions for medical marijuana facilities and providing zoning regulations therefore. Move to table.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for tabling of Bill 6210. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Discussion items. Councilmember Hine, you have the first, item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier in the, before the meeting started, I gave everybody a page on some of my notes here that I wanted to go through. This is regarding the possibility of workers' compensation and life insurance for the elected officials for the city of Bridgeton. And why am I bringing this up? I know a lot of people have probably been asking that, and I listed some points there. There was some erratic behavior at a recent Ward 4 ward meeting by a constituent, or at least one constituent, maybe more. At our June 19th council meeting, I feel there was erratic behavior by a constituent. And then I'm referencing the 2008 City of Kirkwood shooting and killings at the city council meeting that night. I provided council a handout on some of the details of that. And then June 27th, I attended a municipal official training academy seminar. It was titled Public Employees and the Basics, and it's sponsored by our Municipal League of the Metro St. Louis. And it was presented by Georgia Ragland. She's the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Kirkwood. I also provided council a handout of the seminar, the PowerPoint presentation. And then I think, according to our Missouri Workers' Compensation Law, Chapter 287, RSMO, we should be covered. We're elected officials and we are employees, and here's why we're employees. I provided council a handout on IRS regulations concerning employees and independent contractors, and I think if you read the points that make you an employee, I think we're considered employees. Some of the things I think that we should consider as being employees is we're told when and where to attend council meetings. We're appointed by the mayor as ex officios to the boards and commissions, and asked to attend those meetings and give reports to the boards and commission members and come back and report to council. We have a city charter and council rules that we follow. We have a council office or council chambers in here where we can go and do work, and there's a phone available. We have voicemail system where people can leave us voicemails and we can return phone calls. And we're supplied, a lot of our supplies by the city, our agendas, our bills and ordinances for consideration. Again, we have the voicemail, we have copies, envelopes, letterheads, business cards, and we have the city clerk that assists us with some of our duties, and we submit expense reports to the city administrator, and we're reimbursed for such things as lodging, meals, and mileage. But most important, Social Security and Medicare taxes are withheld from our earnings, so we do receive a paycheck, which employees receive paychecks. I had a conversation with one of the staff members at the Municipal League, Steve Aberles, and he sent out I guess a memo, or kind of did a poll of some of the city clerks, a lot of them, and a few of them responded. Some of them do offer both coverages. When I say both, I'm talking about a life insurance policy and also workman's comp insurance. One of them only offers life insurance only, and several of them offer workman's comp. And then there were several that didn't respond or said they didn't offer either of the two things to their elected officials. In no way am I asking for or bringing up that we should be covered under health insurance. My point here is that I'm still working. I do pay my own health insurance. There's a couple others of us that pay their own health insurance. Everybody here pays their own health insurance in one way or another. And if we're injured on the job, I just, that if we're here at a council meeting or taking on other council duties and we're injured, I think that we should be reimbursed for whatever injuries that we have, that we have to use our health insurance for to, get the medical coverage that we need. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion. I don't know if the city attorney has an opinion on whether we're employees and should come under the workman's comp program or the city administrator.
This first goes through council member.
Yeah, I just want to say that I don't believe we're considered employees. We were elected by the people to represent them, and that was our choice to run for that election. And all of us have Medicare or our own insurance and life insurance, I'm sure. So I disagree with us receiving any type of insurance whatsoever, even workman's comp. I don't think we've ever had a council person hurt on the job. I'm not sure, but I've been on here 20 years and never have I known of one being hurt at that time. So I would have to say I disagree with that. We're a city trying to get things done, and I think that money can be spent in other places and not on us. We receive our votes from the people. They trust us to do what's right, and I think, that I am not considered an employee, and I don't agree with us receiving anything like that. That's all I have to say.
Councilmember Gordon.
Well, yes, and Councilman Hine, I do appreciate the research and everything you've done, but I also looked very much at the definitions of employees, and I'm well aware, first of all, of how the IRS does view elected officials as employees for the purpose of collecting FICA taxes and so forth, so I understand that. But I have to more or less concur with the opinion of Councilwoman Abrams in that we are not employees. An employee, by definition, serves at the pleasure of an employer who can direct how he does his job, or where he does his job, and what actually his job is. And my question to you, Councilman Hine, would be to whom do you report? And as an elected official, I report to my constituency and to the city, not to anybody on the staff here. It's our job to oversee. So in that regard, I don't believe we're employees at all, because an employee, by definition, is subject to some form of control. We have certain things, as you correctly point out, we're directed to attend meetings and perform certain duties, but those are enumerated in our charter because they define what we do. But they don't tell us exactly how to do that, and we don't report to anybody as to how we do our job, how we do our research, how we approach it, anything. So from that standpoint, I certainly would not have never considered myself an employee.
Councilmember Sattel.
Yes, Randy, I really appreciate the extra information you're out, especially since you tied in with the city of Kirkwood shooting back in February 2008. That night, I was at a city council meeting that night. It just happened to not be Kirkwood, but it was down in South County in the city of Fenton. And I do remember the panic that night. The whole council in Fenton canceled their whole meeting that night. My wife sees it on TV. There's a shooting at a council meeting. Doesn't even know what city it's at and where I'm at. Okay, so, after that, I remember bringing it up a couple years back, quite a few years back. Not that I'm in favor of workman's comp, but I don't see nothing wrong with having life insurance for all elected officials. there were some individuals that night that lost their lives. But I think if any of us went through that in our own city hall here, I remember when this building was being built, questions were asked, how bulletproof is this? How bulletproof is this? What kind of preventions do we have with this new city hall being built right here? Those that were here before me know the conversations. Those that came after me, it's topics that you don't even know or aren't even aware of. I think it's something at the time we did a little research and said, okay, all of our employees do get life insurance. If it's their salary for 1 year or minimum $50,000, if I remember right when I read. So none of us make $50,000, but maybe we should be looking at next is what minimal cost is this? I mean, it's only a term life policy. Maybe that is super cheap. So before we say yes or no, let's find out what the minimum cost for life insurance is. I know at the same time, I mean, we have a gentleman right here tonight that was in the city of St. Anne, and all of a sudden, you know, they had a mayor died in the middle of office, okay, and all of a sudden, so I'm talking about other municipalities that said, wow, this happened, you know, just abruptly. And so, I think it would help the family members that said, you know, you go through this, you got to create a special election, you know, to fill the seats, and you're out there providing a service for your citizens, like Jerry Grimmer just mentioned. But I think maybe we should make an exception. It doesn't need to be that amount. I mean, but I think we should look at something. Many times we've looked at, okay, we can just pay that out of pocket, but I know we've tried to keep the cost down. And you know, many of us have life insurance. Some of us don't have it. Some of them cashed them in. Does that mean you don't know what individually you don't know what people have? So I would like for us to take a look and see what the actual cost number is, and then make a decision during budget time this fall. Thank you.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, just a couple items. I'm sorry, I'm on the fence either way, but one, are we sure we don't get workers' comp? I mean, I can't believe that we're not paying into that.
Yeah, the city administrator has an answer for you on that one.
We're positive we're not paying into it.
We're not.
The employees' council.
Well, let me address the life insurance first. You know, I have been in contact with some of the other cities and some of the cities that Steve Abels from the league surveyed. Our current life insurance carrier does not allow any elected officials on the policy. It requires that any member be an active employee of the city working regularly in a minimum of 30 hours a week. So my assumption is that these other municipalities have another carrier that they're offering for elected officials, or they have a carrier that allows elected officials along with employees on their plan. So that would certainly be a council decision if you wanted to get rates from another carrier to cover the elected officials. Workers' comp, I spoke with Slate this week, and they have assured me that if a council member gets injured during a council meeting, medical expenses and any loss of the city's stipend that you receive would be covered.
Okay, that answers my question. So we are covered under workers' comp for getting hurt during a council meeting. Is that what I just heard?
I think it's under our liability insurance, though, is it not?
Well, they didn't expressly state workers' comp. What I heard from them is that any elected official that gets hurt during a meeting would be covered by our insurance through Slate. So it wasn't specific workers' comp. Of course, you have liability and workers' comp through Slate. So it could be our liability policy.
Okay, and that's most businesses, you'd have to be a full-time, you know, over 30 or 32 hours to get life insurance, so I can see that. But the workers' comp or some type of insurance if we get hurt, and you know, I never had the fear until, you know, thinking about it, something can happen. There's crazy people that can come in here and do things, and more so lately. So just asking the questions. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Purcell.
Thank you, Mayor. I one of these rare times that I disagree with my co-counsel, Councilmember Grimmer. And I do tend to agree with Councilmember Sittell. I don't see necessarily what the harm is in trying to maybe get some prices, look at even if it's just a completely separate, independent, company. If it's something where the company isn't offering it, then maybe we need to look at a couple other companies. I don't see the harm in looking at some prices and trying to have a nice discussion before we just say no, no, no. And I also have the same sentiment that was just mentioned by the last speaker, is that at first I was kind of like, well, I don't know. But the more you think about it, anybody can walk right in here. When everybody walked in, you probably saw this big metal thing to your right. It's called a metal detector. It's not plugged in. If you, and I understand we're a city council, we're not like, the United States Senate or anything, but if you want to go see them, you got to pass through security. You got to pass through a metal detector. I have it on good authority that maybe part of the reason we don't do it is because it's kind of a pain. We have to staff, there's officers that, would be tied up from doing something else to plug in the metal detector, if we're worried about security. And I get it, we are elected officials, right? We serve our constituents, maybe we are, maybe we aren't employees. I don't know what that gray area is. What I do know, because I don't practice that type of law, and maybe we can hear from the city attorney who may know a little bit more about that. The type of law I do practice, though, is I go to municipal courts a lot, and in the evenings. And when you come to municipal court, here tomorrow night, by the way, that metal detector will be plugged in, and there's an elected official that's going to sit right there in the middle. So I think it's worth looking at, and then obviously I would echo the sentiments of Councilmember Hine and ask the city attorney, is there a state case or a state statute or something that defines whether an elected official is or is not an employee of the city? Thank you.
Councilmember Fitch.
Thank you, sir. I like Drew and Jerry. I talked about this issue with my councilman, and I told him I was in disagreement with him also. And I would like, while I'm speaking, to have the attorney look at section 8.05 in our charter that says, and tell me what he thinks of that. It says, no employee of the city other than elected officials shall continue in such employment after becoming a candidate for any public office. So I don't know what that really means. It sounds to me like if you could be an employee or you couldn't be. I don't know how it would be interpreted. But anyhow, I'm not in favor of this. I believe we are, according to the charter, given compensation, which is for the public to know it's $500 a month councilmen get. And they do take taxes out of it and so forth. When I started on the council, I used to get $25 a meeting with a maximum of $75 for a month. So there was a provision to increase our salaries, and it's been done to get to the $500 a month. I didn't take this job for any benefits. I took the job because I wanted to help the community. And I do accept the compensation that's given to me. I've always in the past accepted it with the thought that after a meeting, most of the council people took their wives and we all went out and had a drink, and that was kind of a little thank you happy hour that we had. So, I'm glad that, and I believe that if I thought that I needed more insurance and because of my safety here and what I'm doing, I would think first about what I want to do, what I think might be bad. Secondly, if I do believe I get the money, and if I'm going to get $500, I could apply and buy my own better insurance policy. So I'm not for it, but I would like to have the attorney tell me what he thinks of that section. Don't have to be tonight, but what that sentence is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hine.
Yes. So I think one of the things I want to clarify, and maybe Mr. Lindbroker can clarify this, should we be included in the workman's comp program here at the city? I've talked to business owners. A lot of the premiums are based on number of employees. Is there an additional expense to put us under? If not, I mean, if we're in that range or number of employees, why don't you just go ahead and add us if it's not gonna cost anymore? Workers' comp.
Councilmember Norris.
Just dozed off a little bit, you know, I'm sorry.
Did I wake you up?
Yes, you did. I was like, wow. I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Bookout, you said that if anything would happen while we're in the chambers, we would be covered. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct.
Okay, so if we're going to other meetings and ex officios, so we would be, if we would fall someplace, there's liabilities in other facilities at our, you know, if I would trip and fall at Parks or up at the rec center, isn't there a liability on that just as a person?
There is, yes.
Okay, so, but I would not be unopposed. I've been uncomfortable in many situations that I would not be unopposed to having the metal detector activated during our council meetings. We have had some situations, and I feel that wouldn't be in today's world, unfortunately. I think that would make us all feel comfortable. I don't know what that cost would be. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to recognize the city attorney, and I've got 2 more lights on, and then we'll close out the discussion. So, Mr. Lindenbroker, there were several questions posed to you.
Yes, sir, thank you. So I don't know the answer in terms of for workers' compensation purposes, our city council members, employees. I think that question specifically would have to be answered, because I agree with Mr. Fetch that the language that he referenced in the charter suggests that, you know, that they could be, for that purpose, treated as employees. Also, section 115.010, the code talks about that chapter, which is the personnel chapter, applying to all employees of the city except elected officials, which again would suggest that for some purposes, our code and charter may treat elected officials as employees. But I'm also aware of case law interpreting the Sunshine Law, for example, where elected officials are, courts have held that elected officials are not employees for the purpose of closing meetings to discuss discipline or removal. So, I'm happy to take a look at this issue if the city directs me to. I don't have an answer for you, but I think we'd have to look at that specific issue.
Very good. Councilmember Sattel.
Yes, the idea about putting the metal detectors functional for our council meeting. Anybody attended our St. Louis County meetings over there? We did for some public things. You have to walk through one in St. Louis County. We've attended any of the St. Anne council meetings. They actually have to walk through over to St. Anne, which is right next to us right here. I think we need to see what other facilities do use them, and see how important it is. We already own it, we already have it. I guess it's just to have it staffed is the issue, okay? But I've thought about it multiple times too, since we have it, maybe we should use it. It might be a little cumbersome when we have such a great attendance like we did tonight. I mean, a lot of times we don't have many people here, so it's basically for the visitors that come in. So I think we just need to check into it, like you said, as far as let's see what it costs. Thanks.
Councilmember.
Yeah, the metal detectors, if somebody wanted to get us, they could get us out of the parking lot or whatever. It does, it doesn't necessarily protect us, really. And if it's an expense and we have to have a police officer at the door and hey, I don't think that it's going to do anything for us, really. Because if somebody's had intent, they're going to get somewhere else. But, and also, I do not think we are employees of the city. You don't report to anyone here. We report to our residents. They're the ones that we're employees of, basically. And I don't think that money needs to be spent on us. And I don't think we need to have workers' comp where we're covered outside of the city business.
We have...
I
didn't say that.
Hold on. Just let her, she's got the floor right now.
Well, I thought you indicated to check into it and see what the additional would be to cover us other places. But I just don't think that, we went over this getting paid more, and getting medical insurance and all that, and I don't think we need it. Let's spend that money on something in the city that needs to be done, or, or employees, we could only give them a 2% increase, and they work hard, But, why give it to us? Our insurance is trying to get elected by the residents to represent them.
Very good. Councilmember Hines, this will be the last one.
Okay, so nobody said how our workman's comp program works. Do you submit the employees' names to the insurance company on a monthly basis or quarterly basis? Are we charged by the number of employees that are being covered? That's what I'm asking. And if it doesn't cost any more to add us on there, I'd like us to be added on there. That's my whole point.
Okay, from what I've heard of council, what we'll do, we will look into whether or not, what the cost would be for life insurance for council members, based on a just arbitrary figure of, say, $10,000 in coverage. On the workers' comp, I think we need to look at, does our liability coverage cover that? Because my limited knowledge of workers' comp, I had a son that went through it. Workers' comp is not just on payment of medical. It also covers if you've lost time at the job. So what, is it a percentage then of your stipend, Councilmember Hine? I'm not sure. Your stipends here, fortunately for many of us, is not very much. Is it because you think you can't work at your regular job? Is that what the other municipalities do? Do they take a percentage of that? I don't know. Did you know the answer? You're shaking your head no, but do you know the answer?
No, I don't.
No. There's a lot more to workers' comp than it is just the liability. I think from what I'm hearing some of the council members say is they're looking more at coverage of an individual that may be injured and covering medical expenses. But I can tell you for sure, workers' comp covers other than just medical. It also covers lost time, earning time. So you get a percentage of what your salary is. That's the way workers' comp works. Am I right, Counselor?
Yes, sir.
And we have no basis unless you're going to do it on the stipends that are provided here to the council members. Is that what we're talking about? We can look into those things. That's the question. Secondly, we can have the chief, we'll look into what it costs to bring in, because it basically takes 3 officers, if I'm not mistaken, chief, on a court night to process people through the metal detectors. We can look into that. But it takes 3. You got to have one person monitoring the X-ray or whatever they call it. Then another person has to wand somebody if they're found to have beeped off. And then another person is keeping crowd control going on in the lobby area or whatever you want to call it. But we can run the cost figures on all of that stuff and bring it back. I would suggest maybe at the second council meeting in August. Fair assessment for everybody? All right. We will move on then to the second item, which Councilmember Grimmer has brought up. Discussion item. Councilmember Grimmer.
All right, I would like to introduce this as a discussion item, and recall several months ago we visited the issue of the Bridgeton Place Stormwater Improvement Project, and at that time we agreed that there was an issue and that the city would take a look at and maybe making some improvements or addressing the drainage issues that were involved in that project. We did get, of course, the staff did go ahead and get the bids, and you'll see that the lowest bid came in at $70,260.97. So that the issue then is, do we want to approach it from that, or recall that one of the other alternatives, well, we had 2 alternatives, one knew nothing about it, which I think may or may not be an alternative. But secondly, that we could look at doing work internally. So just for the purpose of discussion, I would point out that a bid from a contractor includes, of course, the fact that they've got to do design work and so forth, have it signed off by PE, they've got to certify their work, and more importantly, they've got to guarantee their work, and then on top of that, they have to make a profit, which I understand, I'm not arguing with a bit. My own approach to this would be, in view of the fact that the $70,000 figure represents quite a sum of money. That one of the alternatives presented to us is that we could possibly approach this using the resources of our own city departments to accomplish this work as well as possible. I think that we have the capabilities of doing the work, and hopefully we could achieve a similar result at a considerable lesser amount. So again, as a discussion, let's go.
Further comments? Councilmember Norris.
Were we able to get a timeline on when this all started from staff?
Mr. Peterson, you're with us tonight. Mr. Gunn's out on vacation. Can you answer the questions when we had the first report on this?
Sure. We met with the Blaze, the people who had been complaining about this on August 18th, 2017, Public Works did, and I believe we probably met with them earlier during previous administration also.
Okay, does that answer your, Councilmember Norris? Roughly?
Roughly, but I said, at that point, what did you see as the damage to the property, and could you tell where the cause of the problem was coming from?
Sure. There was erosion on the back of their hill. It was pretty obvious where it was coming from, the property behind them. There was a lot of concentrated flow from that situation. This property that was built behind them, it was given an occupancy permit in 2006. So that's when they're claiming that ever since then, that's how long they've been having the problem.
That's what was indicated to me by one of the residents. They purchased their home in 1994, did not have a problem before that until the property behind them had the garage and extra pavement and caused the runoff. At any time, do you think that that could have been anything that we got wrong information from MSD, that the runoff was within rights and we did not get the correct information and we let them go ahead and build it anyway? And I'm kind of putting you on the spot there, but I didn't know if there was something that could be a gray area.
I don't know whether you should answer that.
Okay, all right. I just need to, there's some other property that's above there that, there's some lots that could be sold in the future, and this could develop more.
Thank you. Councilmember Stell.
Never mind. Thank you.
Councilmember Zimmer.
I just wonder about this whole operation we're doing here. We're just jumping into this one person, and we have had other problems with other houses and that involve multiple houses that we haven't done anything on. And I think we need a better system of how we're handling this rather than just jumping into this one. I feel like I was sort of pushed in, I voted against it, pushed into getting the bid to begin with. I think we should have a system to allow us to pick who has the worst problems. And, we had the Bridgeton Meadows Court where this is several years ago, back before across from the old city hall, where the water is just draining into 4 yards there. And they've been complaining about it forever, and we didn't do anything. We didn't volunteer to jump on that and fix it. Now we're jumping in and fixing it. And I can see this may be a little bit of a different situation here, reading between the lines, but I think we need a better system of how we pick and choose what we do first and how we spend our money and when we spend it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fitch.
Yes, are we discussing how we want to do this project, whether or not we want to do it by in-house or Public Works, or do we want to go to the contractor? Is that what we're discussing?
That's one of the issues, I think, from what I heard from Councilmember Zimmer, though, is the whole process about which to identify stormwater projects, whether or not they should be addressed or not in the city of Bridgeton.
Okay, I understand that too, because I think if we do go to outside contractor, we gotta approve the bid that we have, right? So, you know, I'm for just holding up and seeing what everybody else wants right now.
Okay. Councilmember Hine?
So, as council president, I appointed a residential stormwater subcommittee, and there were 2 meetings held. Mr. Fetch was the chairperson. He resigned. I appointed a new chairperson, and the members voted to suspend the subcommittee until after the election, and then there was a election for a new council president. And so the guidelines are on hold until somebody does something with it. Thank you.
Councilmember Abram?
Yeah, I think, you know, we can't say, here's how we're gonna do each one. We're gonna do this one first and this one second, because problems come up that you don't know about. So to try to say what we're gonna do first and what second, I think, you know, they all have to be done on priority. But I would say take it as it comes in, as a, you know, somebody reports a problem. Go look at it. That's what the city did here. The city wouldn't look at it before it was determined that, yeah, it's bad enough that something should be done with it. Some of them, you know, we turn in and they'll look at it and they'll say, no, it's not that bad, that we, you know, have to do something about it. So I think as it, you know, comes into Public Works and they look at it, that's the way we should determine. Because you can set up a list of what you want to do, and that list may go out the window, because you'll have another problem come in that's worse than any on that list. So I think it would be hard to say, we're going to do this one first and this one second, and, you know, name them. So, but I think we should do it on a complaint basis and look at it and have the city look at it and see, you know, what we ought to do with it, whether we should do it or not.
Councilmember Sattel?
Yes, I will mention now, like I was talking about before, in our budget, we list our stormwater projects. And this, you know, we've got a little list on there that's in each year's budget, and, you know, those are things that when we plan our budget, we should be looking at that. And this one's not even in our budget yet, so I think we should take a look at it. If we're going to add this to our budget, we look at the other ones that are already in our proposed section, and, you know, talk about this in November time, you know, during budget time. Thank you.
Councilmember Norris?
Thank you. When we ended this stormwater, it was not going to be a list. It was just going to come in as needed. We would have our staff, may it be the procedure to call us, then we would call the city. So in most procedures, it would cause we would have the professional staff take a look at it. And again, we have to look at these all on an individual basis, because of course we are looking at private property. We do have to go through all the proper channels and getting permission to see how severe it is. Well, in 2 years, this has escalated into some severity, and so this is why we have kept this, we've already got the engineering project already done, so now we can implement, and so it's the decision on, do we do in-house people, or do we pay for the outside people, which would cost more money? But then, of course, I don't know where that would be with MSD's permission. Is our people, would they be checked off and certified as an outside person? That is a question I would like
Answered.
Yes.
Okay. We can check on that. Councilmember Purcell?
Thank you, Mayor. I play poker, and in poker, when you're faced with a decision, right, somebody bets, you can either call or you can fold, okay? We called $25,000 to get a bid, okay? And now we're faced with $70,000 up to $100,000 that we have to call. So the question is, do we go ahead and put the extra money in, or do we fold it? Now, I voted for the bid. At the time, I said that, look, if we have the money, we should help the people out. That's our job, right? We are here, as we just talked about, 5 minutes ago, our job is to our constituents. So we should help them if we can. We don't have unlimited resources. This is on private property. I think there's a good argument that can be made that the city shouldn't have anything to do with it at all. If we are going to delve out $100,000 plus on a project, I think we need a system. And the fact that that residential stormwater committee hasn't been reconvened is disturbing to me, all right? We had one task, set up a system, and we couldn't do it. It's just funny how we argued for 15 minutes about a $100 a month life insurance policy, but now some people on this council want to spend $100,000+ without even having a system in place. That is egregious to me. That's crazy. We need gold now. Thanks.
Councilmember Burr.
Well, a couple of things. As council president, I would not have a problem reconstituting the stormwater committee. However, I'm very opposed to having a list. I think, as has been pointed out by other council members, creating a list in itself creates a tremendous amount of potential problems. These issues need to be addressed as they come up because priorities change. And again, the second point I want to make is I'm extremely impressed with the in-house capabilities. I point to what went on down in, when we had the flooding 3-4 years ago down in DePaul Hills, DePaul Meadows and off of the Rock Road back in through there. That was a huge project and unbelievable flooding. And yet our city had the resources to handle that. I would be in favor of doing having the same approach here. Again, I think we can get a favorable result through the resources we have at the city at considerably less expense. And I'm in favor of addressing these projects as they come up. Because again, creating a list, again, who gets on the list, why isn't somebody on the list? I can just see all sorts of problems with that type of thing. As far as the stormwater committee, yeah, let's go. Let's get some people on there. I would be willing to serve. Let's go. But let's address this issue here first, and let's see if we can come to some kind of consensus this evening, if we can, please.
All right, we got 4 more. And then can we call them quits and then move on? Councilmember Fetch.
Yes, I think if we go back and remember something, that when we discussed the engineering contract and also the project together, we also said that it was the proper way to go out for bids. It could be the proper way because we would get, after the project was completed, it would be responsibility of MSD. And I don't know if that's where we're going with the thing or not, but that was a plus for going out for bids for the project. And I guess now we need to make a motion whether or not we're going to have the city do the work, or we're going to accept the bid and have an outside contract. Does that make sense to you, sir? Or do we just going to table it again tonight?
Yeah.
Because I do think that we need to hear from the city, from the engineering, can they do the job?
Well, I think what you're looking at is a comparison of we have a bid from a contractor and whether or not our forces could do the job and how much the cost would be for the city of Bridgeton employees to perform that work.
Okay.
Then the second question on that is if the city of Bridgeton performs the work, will the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District take it over for maintenance activity after it's completed?
Those were good questions.
Because otherwise, that will be the responsibility of us as the city of Bridgeton. And normally in this area, the Metropolitan Sewer District takes on those responsibilities, not the municipalities, because we're within MSD's service here. So those 2 questions in my mind have to be answered before you as council decide what we want to do with this. Did you have something you wanted to add, Mr. Lookout?
Yeah, Mayor, I just want to let the council know tonight's item on here is for discussion purposes. We didn't really intend for the council to take action. But I also want to let you know I did speak with the city engineer, and we looked at the bids, and I know that the low bid was 70, so I talked to Robert, and within the bid specs, the city has the right to remove some of the itemized functions of the contract and self-perform those to try to reduce the cost. So I had Robert take a look at it to let me know what he would feel comfortable having staff perform. And based on the items that he thought we could do in-house, we could reduce that amount to about $55,000. So we could knock off about $15,000.
So what we need to do is present that as a written proposal and see whether or not how council wants to proceed after that. We'll go ahead with 3.
Okay, I would appreciate getting something like that, and then when everyone's completed, table it tonight and bring it up later.
Correct.
Okay?
That's the intent. Councilmember Hine?
I just wanted to see if it's possible to ask the affected residents if they would share in the costs. So,
That can be approached to them. I don't know that they will. Never hurts to ask.
thank you.
Councilmember Avery?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Bob brought it up that, when this came up, it wasn't in the budget to do. Well, no, it wasn't in the budget to do because we didn't know about it. As I pointed out, problems come up that, you don't know about and you've got to look at them. So it wasn't in the budget, you're right, on that. But also, I think that's one of the reasons that we said we would do this was that we were part of that problem by approving that garage. And that's when the problem started, when that garage, runoff came from the pavement. So we figured we was part of the problem, even though we went by MSD standards. But that's all I have to say.
Councilmember Norris?
Yes, I just want to let President Bremer, I was on it, and I tabled it because of the election and everything, if we'd like to redo the stormwater. But at the last meeting, we again said the procedures are already in line, we just don't have it written down. The procedures always was to contact our engineering and our professional department with these issues, and then we would have to say, is that a possibility, or is that something that the homeowner needs to take care of? We can't solve every problem. We wish we could, but government cannot take care of everything. But I will be in contact if you would like me to stay on that as chairman. I can do that. But at this point, and then again, the people do need to be advised. This has been going on, and they've gotten quite upset. And I think the staff has felt some of their wrath, and so have we. So I would like to get this settled one way or the other. Thank you.
Councilmember Brennan?
Yes, as I'm hearing of council, the majority of the council, I think that we're somewhat in agreement that we need more information. A report back precisely from the city engineer, and the question I would like is that exactly what we would get, let's say for the suggested figure of $55,000, would that include a certification, or a guarantee, and a guarantee of acceptance by MSD and so forth? I think that that's information we have to have before we make any kind of decision. So accordingly, I would like to table this discussion item to a point where we get a report back from the city engineer, and then we can pick up the discussion when we get that.
So is yours in the form of a motion to table
I move
tonight?
to table this tonight, pending the report of further information.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to table further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Standing motion carried. Sorry, Councilman Stowe. All right, moving on. We are down to the attorney's report.
Nothing else from me, sir.
Very good. Council communications. Councilmember Norris.
Oh, my God. I just have a question, 2 questions. Have we had any demolition permits issued for Biolab or Al's Greenhouse? People have been asking when both projects would be beginning. So
We will have Mr. Peterson trying to resolve that question before he answers.
that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Abrams.
I think I've said enough tonight, I have nothing.
Councilmember Hine.
Our fireworks are really turned out okay.
Councilmember Hine.
Thank you, constituents, for being here, and Mr. Peterson, thanks for being with us tonight. And I want to make a comment. Mr. Egan got up and spoke earlier, and I thought that was pretty neat that he went out and did some homework and found out what space was available for lease or for sale. And I didn't even think about the property here where the old Tony's was, but there's a couple of others that are coming up. The Pizza Hut building, they're vacating that property and moving down next to AutoZone. And then also the Regions Bank building over here at Coles Plaza, they're going to be vacating that building, but just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Councilmember Fitch.
I think those fireworks were excellent, the parade was excellent, and thank all the employees for their hard work and giving up their holiday. That's all, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Brenner.
I think we've said enough in the words of our closing the radio show. We've beaten this one to death. Let's go home. Thank you.
Councilmember Purcell.
I got just a few. I'll try to make it quick. First of all, again, yeah, thank everybody for being here. I know the weather was crazy. I know it's a super long meeting, so for everybody that stayed, thank you so much. Happy to have you here, doing the mass communications project. It's always nice when, people come and take the interest in the local government, so thank you for coming. And anybody that may be watching this online later, again, thanks for tuning into your local government if you're still watching after, 2 hours and 20 minutes. The next thing that I have is, obviously, everybody knows it's super hot outside, right? And because of that, just even though we're only in July, we're not in the dog days of summer in August, take a second if you have it, check on your neighbors, especially if they're elderly or they have small children. Just make sure everybody's doing okay, is getting cool, getting plumbing fluids. Speaking of fluids, McAllister's tomorrow, July 18th, is a free tea day, so everybody go check out McAllister's here in Bridgeton. And a big thank you to them for doing the tea after the Target parking lot after the parade. I thought that was really awesome. I also had it in my notes to echo what Councilmember Hines said. The Regions Bank, which is where I bank, they're going to be on the Rock Road here in Bridgeton. They're closing. They're calling it a consolidation, but basically they're closing. Only one employee is going over to the St. Anne branch. August 23rd will be their last day, and they're closing at 2 p.m. that day. Just like every other council member said, the July 4th celebration was awesome. It is the pinnacle of celebration in the city. That's 24th. That's incorrect. The meeting has been moved to the following Wednesday. It's 2 weeks from tonight. It's the picnic meeting, and it'll be Wednesday, July 31st. So anybody can come out. That would be great. Thank you so much. Drive safe.
Councilmember Stoll.
Yes, we all saw how nice the 4th of July is for the parade and the fireworks, and my quick story actually ties back to the mayor, and it's always an enjoyment when I can actually do something with my granddaughter that's 3 years old. It's even more enjoyable when it comes back and I come back to the stage where we were all at, and she said, they said my name, because her last name's Sattel, and it was the mayor that said the comment to him, and the chief there, and they're always saying, oh, please don't listen to us. Well, here's a 3-year-old, listen to what's going on up there. So I just want to let you know that, people really, I guess, you don't think of it, they're listening to you up there, but, it was really enjoyable that she actually recognized, that when somebody else is actually speaking. So I thought that was very positive about the 4th of July. The other issue I wanted to bring up, we've had power outages. When I came here, my power was out. I just got a text message, it is back on, but I'm going home shortly because my neighbor's trees are laying over my backyard right now. So, the storms are out there. When I came here, coming down Natural Bridge, I saw the Brittany Circle down here had a couple trees laying over, and that was just on the way over here. So, as we leave here, we're probably going to find more trees down, maybe even other people's backyards when you get home. So, good luck with the weather. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad a 3-year-old is listening now. Councilmember Zimmerman.
Good meeting tonight, it's long, but I think we got a lot accomplished. I don't have anything other than that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with department reports. Mr. Peterson, we welcome you tonight. Mr. Gonzalez, anything? Public Works and Streets?
As far as Joni's question, I'm not aware of any demo permit applications that's been submitted by Biolabs or Art House Greenhouse. But I have been told there's Biolabs engineers have called us about the process involved in demolition permits.
Thank you.
Anything else? No. Mr. Kane, over the parks, congratulations, another successful 4th of July.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more. The parade was fantastic, amazing weather. I thought that was a really neat event. The Special Events Commission really worked hard on that, so kudos to them. The fireworks, as many of you know, we had some challenges there with the rain that swept through right as the band was going to go on. We lost 2 of our 2 main food vendors due to the rain and some permitting issues, but it was all hands on deck in the concession stand, which was the only food left, and even the mayor was in there helping us in the concession stand. So literally all hands were on deck. But we got through it, and we had a meeting afterward and had some some notes on things to improve for next year. So looking forward to that. Thanks to all the park department and the police for their help with that event too. Wouldn't know what to do without them. And also want to mention the concerts in the park going very well. We did our first Thursday event last week. Just want to hit a different, target a different market there. Sunday evening may not work for all families, so we tried Thursday. It seemed to work really well. And then this Sunday, we've got a concert at 6 o'clock. The Dueling Hobbits, I know everyone knows who the Dueling Hobbits are, of course. Music for all ages, they consider themselves a great family at Gentry Park this Sunday.
Very good. Chief?
Speaking of the 4th of July, from 7 p.m. until midnight, we responded with 26 calls for service relative to discharging fireworks. So they kept us fairly busy, but I have received several phone calls stating that the signs worked and that the illegal use of fireworks was down, especially in some of the neighborhoods. So I think that was a good one on his part. I will try to have the other two officers at the next meeting. That would be Joshua Forbes and Zachary Coker, for introductions. And I'm hoping to have a collage of photographs of all the uniformed members available for you to take a look at. So that way you'll be able to put it in your face.
What do you say? That'd be great. Thank you.
The last thing, I would like you to just keep Claire in your prayers. She's not able to return to work yet. She had a little medical issue that she's trying to get over. It was pretty serious at one point. I'm hoping to get her back by the 25th because I am absolutely lost in that without some supervision.
I would understand the feeling. Mr. Bookout?
I have nothing further, Mayor.
Very good. Due to the time and everything, I don't have anything as well. I would note for council that we have 2 more public hearings scheduled for our August 7th event. And that is all I have. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Bob. We are adjourned.